What do you imagine when you think about what could be?
Why should we look backwards before we look forwards?
When you are asked to think about the history of Minneapolis, do you think about the thousands of years before there was a Minneapolis?
Gather the past's fragile remnants, stitch them back together into images of the first people, the Dakota.
See whole villages that moved depending on what the seasons offered. See the hunting, the fishing, the farming.
Pull back the grid, replant the forests, remove the highways, streetcars, railroads, take away the English language and overlay what we know now with what was for thousands of years. What imagined future holds the perspective of the people, the water, the ways of wild rice?
Can you imagine a time when fur traders traveled with ethics, who made friends and family with the Dakota villagers, all of their names as eroded as sandstone river bottoms?
Harvest the corn, squash, beans, but how could you possibly prepare for the season of the missionary who lays his version of salvation on the land you live in?
Behind the religious comes the appointed. Ramsey, the governor, and his friend Sibley, with a few other white men, negotiate the treaties of 1851. Ramsey makes a fortune in real estate. Sibley made money from fur trading, lumber, river transportation, and now land, land, land. What was once real land is now real estate, bought but never paid for. Treaties abrogated, treaties revoked, treaties ignored.
Starving, waiting for inadequate money and goods promised but never delivered, Little Crow is caught in the complexity, uprising. A 6-week U.S. Dakota War of 1862, a military commission sentences 303 men to die. President Lincoln pardons all but 38. Their lives are taken in the largest mass hanging of U.S. history.
Acts of Congress revoke all treaties between the U.S. government and the Dakota. Dakota are exiled and forced into abusive boarding schools to complete the government's erasure of the original people.
Minneapolis is founded on the accumulation of these wounds.
The bold building of railroads, the cutting of forests for lumber, the flour mills, woolen mills, ironworks, machine shops, and mills for cotton, paper, sashes, and planing wood. The river, always the river.
Bohemians build shanties next to it.
The falls power all of it.
The city proceeds to become itself, at times wayward and perverse, at times full of fight and bite. Caucasian people develop ways to hold power close through covenants, while people locked out find places to claim as their own.
The city invests significantly in streetcars. Population surges. Prostitution surges. Unequal punishment surges. Segregation in housing surges. Class division emerges.
A narrative of an ideal Minneapolis is sold as the few mixed-race neighborhoods are labeled slums and destroyed. This marks the beginning of a 3-decade-long urban renewal campaign that entrenches segregation along race and class lines. Misinformed and anxious white homeowners blame lowering real estate prices on the influx of African American families moving north and form hateful mobs.
Workers unionize and win battles against big business in bloody clashes.
Minneapolis is reported as being beyond repair. It is labeled as both the center for workers' revolutions and the anti-Semitic capital of the country.
There is only one spot deemed safe for African American travelers, a settlement house in North Minneapolis.
The decline. Close the gates of the Gateway District. Destroy the evidence of poverty. Reorder the buildings as we reorder the pattern of social relationships. If hatred is learned, then teach the opposite. Self-survey. Name what is real.
The future president of the Minnesota NAACP, Matthew Little, tells this story of when he first moved to Minneapolis.
I stayed at the YMCA downtown for 4 days. I walked around the downtown area. I felt so out of place because I didn't see another black person those whole 4 days. I found a police officer and asked, "Where in the heck do black people live around here?" The cop replied, "Well, I tell you, if you go down between 3rd and 4th Avenue, there is a bar that's owned by a colored person." So I followed his directions, and sure enough, it was full of black people. They really looked good. I hadn't seen any for a while.
Minneapolis planners put their brains together to address white flight, celebrate the demise of streetcars in a move to modernize. White upper-class populations suburbanize, and more immigrants move to the city to where there can be economic opportunities.
Then the choice is made that solidifies the already present race and class divides as white engineers choose the routes of 94 and 35, drawing lines through the land that would become cheapest to acquire.
And the divides get dug deeper. The GI Bill of Rights provides cash stipends for schooling, job training, and low-interest loans to World War II vets as long as those veterans are white.
The American Indian movement is founded to turn the attention of Indian people toward a renewal of spirituality, which would impart the strength of resolve needed to reverse ruinous policies.
Chicano brown berets build power and pride within Latino communities.
The Plymouth Avenue Rebellion inspires a policy push towards racial justice, as Mayor Arthur Naftalin observes,
"A fire of protest against indignity and denial is burning here."
These accumulations of activism push white voters to elect Charlie Stenvig, a member of the Police Federation who campaigned on a law and order platform.
once again the city tries to address urban blight, focusing on Hennepin and Nicollet. Federal urban renewal funds dry up, so the city bulldozes whole districts, hoping private developers will pay to build on vacant land through tax increment financing. A new era begins of private developers dramatically altering housing, commercial, and cultural districts.
Meanwhile, mothers worked to desegregate schools in 1971.
The Minnesota Miracle Plan is signed, while miraculous lesbian-owned bookstores thrive, and towers are built that scrape the sky, and secret wars end, and progressive Catholics and Lutherans help Hmong refugees make Minneapolis home.
Skyways elevate people above the street, while people take to the streets once again to push back against police violence. Civil unrest and civil rights and commissions, while communities work and fight through different lives. Queers and crackdowns on porn theater, pitting feminist lesbians against gay men and sex war.
And play ball.
And the Americans with Disabilities Act alters streets and lives, increasing mobility for all.
The internet alters knowledge and lives, changing everything that has been into what will be.
We begin to care for clean water, create charter schools.
We begin to welcome Somali refugees.
We write a comprehensive plan that states we will be a people-oriented city while we lower the minimum wage to the lowest it has ever been.
We are a city that builds and breaks, builds and bulldozes, open doors to some and locks doors to others. We all live here in homes sometimes taken by banks or tornadoes. Some lose while others gain.
We either create policy or push back against it. We grow. What history do we want to write as we move forward from what has been into what will be?
How do we co-create a future where the we is greater than the me?